All right, you can be seated. You know, we started live streaming years ago. I don't even know how many years ago it's been since we started live streaming. And the reason that we started live streaming is because there are people who get in situations in life and they are just not physically able to attend a church anymore. And I have I don't know if he's second cousin, third cousin, he's just family. That's all I know. I don't figure a lot of that other stuff out. But I want to say hi to them this morning. This is kind of like a pre-sermon shout out. Glenn and Dolores Burse watch, I think, almost every Sunday, if not every Sunday. They watch the live stream at Clarksville Highway. They live in Jackson, Tennessee. So I just want to tell them hello, and I'm glad that they tune in and listen to us on Sunday. You know, and you may know people who do that as well every week, and we'll do a shout out for them. I started to, y'all remember Romper Room? Anybody remember that? I can't do that anymore. Does anybody remember how that went? Romper, Stomper, Bumper, Boo. Yeah. So Diane and Charlie spent a lot of time watching TV. So, and then they would call out on Romper Room, you know, who she would see. You know, she's looking through her glass, and I always wanted her to call. I don't think she ever called Greg. But anyway, I think maybe we ought to do a Romper Room thing every so often. When we know people are listening, we'll do Romper, Stomper, Boo, or whatever that was. Okay, never mind. That was your commercial. Let's imagine for a moment that you are going in tomorrow morning to have surgery. And I have a question for you. Would you rather have the surgeon or the anesthesiologist? Which one would you like to not show up? Now, I need the surgeon, right? Because he's smart enough to know whatever it is he's supposed to be doing. Y'all know the difference between major and minor surgery, don't you? Minor is when they do it to you. Major is when they do it to me. So whatever they're doing, I want that surgeon. I want him there. I need him because he's the one that knows exactly what he's supposed to do. Like if you're going to have a really serious surgery, most of us, even though we love our general practitioners, we don't want them doing the surgery, right? So I need the surgeon because he has the skill to do whatever it is that needs to be done. But I sure don't want him to cut on me without the anesthesiologist there first. You know, you think about those old westerns where they clamp down on the bullet or something. You're like, no, I don't even like to go to the dentist and get a shot. Right? So you're looking at that and you're thinking, okay, which one do you want? And it's okay for you to tell me the correct answer because which one do you want? I want both. I don't want one sitting home. I don't want one deciding, getting up that morning thinking, you know, it's just a pretty day. I just don't think I want to work today. I need both of them to be there. I phrase it that way because that's what happens with us. Because Jesus is looking down on us and he says, well, do I need the praying guy or the mercy showing guy? Or do I need the administrator or the one that can teach? Do I need somebody who has the gift of giving, or do I just need something like a prophet? And the reality is for the church to work correctly, God needs all of us. Now, here's what's happening in Corinth. You can piece this together by looking at just different parts of the text. There are people there that God has blessed with gifts. They have ability. I mean, maybe they have the ability to teach. Maybe in their time frame they had the gift of prophecy. Maybe they had the gift of tongues. Maybe they had the interpretation of tongues. Maybe they had the gift of song. I mean, you got all of these gifts that are flowing around in the New Testament church. And what's happened in Corinth is they start arguing. They're fussing and complaining and bickering about which one has the best gift. And Paul says it's things, he uses words like Schism. We don't use schisms a lot, do we? We don't talk about that. It's like when you rip something apart. You ever had a rip in your garment? Like, y'all are just looking at me crazy, right? But you know what a rip in your garment is, right? You ever had one that kind of had an inopportune time where it's like, I need to go home, right? So you get that kind of thing. Right, just laughing. I don't know what happened to you, buddy, but it must have been something. So you got this stuff that's going on, and he said that's what it's like. It's like you got this big tear in the church. You've got jealousy. Y'all are jealous of one another. You know, you think that guy's gift might be better than my gift, so I'm not going to use it, or maybe, and man, isn't that just like us? Or we look around and we start comparing ourselves with somebody else, and we think, well, I'm not that good, so maybe I shouldn't do it at all. And they've got all of this jealousy and fighting and bickering that's going on in the church, and every gift that they have is not theirs. Every gift that they have has been given by God, and they can't figure out how to work together as a church. And what happens is when the church starts to fall apart, when the church doesn't function the way that God envisions for the church to function, then the message of Jesus doesn't get preached. And when the message of Jesus doesn't get preached, or the message of Jesus is slandered because of the behavior of the people who are spreading the message of Jesus, and people decide they don't want to come to Jesus. They don't want to be Christians, and lost people aren't saved, and the purpose of the church gets lost and muddled in all of that because we can't seem to get along. And Paul, in 1 Corinthians 12, 13, and 14, where we are, he's trying to pull them back together. And he writes some really incredible stuff. He said, there are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but the same God works all of them in all men. And men there is not male. Men there is mankind. Okay? So make sure we get the text right. Do you see a word that seems to keep showing up in that? Y'all can guess if you want, if you don't see it. It's all right. Like you're not getting a grade on this. I'm not sending the report card home. Different? Same? Oh, wait, well, that's kind of weird, isn't it? We've got same and different in the same, same passage. We've got same and different. Well, is it same or is it different? Yeah, that's what it is. It's the same Spirit, the same Lord, the same God. It's the same, but God does it with different gifts through different people. There is this unity that comes in the church, and it's unity that happens because of the diversity. And you're not going to get a lot of slides this morning, so if you got a Bible, you better find 1 Corinthians 12. Okay, so you can just flip along there with me, or you can scroll on your phone. Just make sure if it's on your phone, it's not the lunch menu. All right? So, now to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. Now, y'all ever run across those great big Bible words and you're kind of scratching your head trying to think how you make sense out of big Bible words? I did a sermon series one time, it was, what was it called? Big Words, I forgot, doesn't matter. If I can't remember it, I'm sure you can't. But I talked about big Bible words. I knew what it was about. Manifestation, boy, that's a very impressive sounding word, isn't it? Manifestation. What does that mean? What does it mean? It's a manifestation. You're thinking, am I going to see something like a ghost, or am I going to see some apparition that's going to show up? It's a manifestation of the Spirit. We're going to get it really simple for you. The manifestation of the Spirit is the way, the visual way that the Spirit makes itself known in the world. The visual representation of something. Here's what happens. Just follow with me for a second. It's going to sound like we're going way around like somewhere, but we're going to come right back to where we are. So you got to hang on. When I was in youth ministry back in 1992, 1993, I don't remember when it was, there was this guy that came out with these one-act skits about God. His name was Kurt Cloninger. And he had one that was called God in a Box. And the God in a Box, he stood there and he had this little box around him. He said, you know, I used to do really, really great things. I used to part seas. And I could do miracles. I could make axe head float. I could do all some really, really great things. But people kind of got where they didn't understand that, so they put me in this little box. So I'm now in this little box, and I can't get out of my little box. So I don't do any of that great stuff anymore. Now, there are some of us who go through life thinking, oh, God did some really great things back in like the Old Testament and some of those miracles in the New Testament, but God, He ain't doing nothing now. It's like we got this, there was this way back there time where God was going to do really great things, and there's this way future time when God's going to do some really, really great things, and then there's this time we're right in here now, and God, He don't really do anything right now. We just kind of here. Because we don't see Him doing any great miracle somewhere. Right? And there are miracles that are absolutely self-evident. I mean, that's like the parting of the Red Sea where you look at something like that and say, okay, there ain't another way that could happen. But you know how God makes Himself known in our world? It's going to really blow your mind if you hadn't thought about it. How does God make Himself known in our world? Through the gifts that God gives to us, because we are the manifestation, we are the visual representation of God's Spirit in the world in which we live. And you don't think there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that? You mean that people are going to see God by what I do? Yes. You mean that if the world really wants to see something great that God has done, that they'll look at me? Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Oh, I didn't mean to show you that yet. So in 1 Corinthians 12, I thought I had a verse for 11, but maybe I don't. Let me skip. Okay, forget that. All right, so look at 1 Corinthians 12, verse 11. All right? The one and the same Spirit works all things, distributing to each one just as He wishes. That's a really great verse. So He works all things. Who's working? The Spirit. And He's working all things, and the way He works all things is He distributes to each one the gifts that they have. In all of that diversity, there's wisdom. And so, you'll know this example He uses, and we don't have to do it this morning. He talks about a body, right? Like, you need the parts of your body. Does an eye need a hand? I mean, let's just say the eye is looking out one morning and he says, man, I think I'd like to have me some Fruity Pebbles. If the eye sees Fruity Pebbles, how can the eye get Fruity Pebbles? It's okay, y'all can talk. How does he get Fruity Pebbles? Well, he's going to have to use a shoulder and an arm and an elbow and a hand. He's going to reach out and get it. Can the eye get it without some help? No. No. Because the body has to work together. Now, Paul says that's what your body's like. And that's what the church body is like. Have you ever kind of struggled trying to figure out what it is that you're supposed to be doing? Like, how is God working through me? What kind of gift might I have? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? This has been, by far, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not think I am wrong. I think there have been more weddings and wedding showers this year at Clarksville Highway than any year I've ever been here. It's like people just get married left and right. I think it's great, but I don't have to plan all the parties. But I'm just telling you, there's a lot of wedding stuff going on. Now, if you go to a wedding, it would not be uncommon for you to hear 1 Corinthians 13, would it? How many of y'all heard 1 Corinthians 13 at a wedding? Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Always protects. Always trusts. Always hopes. Always perseveres. Love never fails. How many of y'all heard that at a wedding? If you've preached in your lifetime or done a wedding, how many of you have used it in a wedding? Is it a good wedding verse? It's okay. It's a good wedding verse. It's all right. It's about love. Did Paul write it about weddings? No. What did Paul write it about? He wrote about church. He wrote it about the way you guys are supposed to get along with each other. Now, it'll go over to weddings. It's okay to use it for that, but that's not what it's about. Paul says, you want to boast about your gift? This is the first part of chapter 13. You want to boast about your gift? What if I can speak in the tongues of angels and men? Whew, pretty impressive, isn't it? I mean, how many of you, and I don't know that this gift is alive in the church today, I haven't seen it, but if you could speak in the language of an angel, how many of you would think that you're really something? I mean, I think I was really something. But if you could do that, but you can't do it out of love, just make it a big noise. What if you have the gift of prophecy? What if you could fathom all mysteries? You could know everything. You know what? It won't last. Because what happens to that? What happens to all of that knowledge and mystery? Well, there's going to be a time that the complete thing comes. Jesus, we're all going to have it. You're not going to be anything special. What if I go out and just dedicate my body? What, I have faith. I can just move mountains. I can have faith, just move mountains from one place to the other. Wouldn't that be pretty cool? Except, what's going to happen to faith? It's going to become reality. You're not going to need it. And Paul says, every one of those things that you're boasting about, don't you realize they start with God and they end with God and they're all temporary? Every one of them are temporary. So what's supposed to happen in that is what is going to remain is you work this out in love where you're working with one another. And quit boasting about what gift you have or if another guy has a different gift than you have or which one's better. You know, it'd be like me getting up and saying, well, y'all, you can go to Jeff's class if you want, but I can teach a whole lot better than Jeff can. No, why you won't go to his class? And I don't know why in the world you'd want somebody else leading the singing but me. At all, have you heard me pray? Who have you heard me pray? And you think, Greg, we don't act like that. No, thankfully we don't. But you know what else we don't do? We don't always look at our place in the body and try to ask, how is it that God is using us? What gift has God given you? Now, I'm going to give you something today. It's called a spiritual gifts inventory. And when you leave today, there's going to be some guys at the back, and I hope you take one of these with you. You don't have to tell me what the results are. I wish you would do this, though. I wish you'd share it with the elders. I wish you would do this tonight if you're covering some of this material at small group. I wish tonight at small group you would ask somebody what they think about your result. It doesn't take long to take it. It's not very many questions. Let me see how many it is. I can't even find the questions. That shows you how good I am with this, right? 108 questions. It took me like 15 minutes to take it. So let's say I'm a great test taker. It might take you 25. Right? Now, I want to tell you something about this because I gave this to some guys a couple of weeks ago, and they got all confused. So I want to make sure you understand this. It's got instructions right here. They're not very complicated, but here are the instructions. When you tear this part out that's got the answer sheet, and you rip that out to do your inventory, keep those two together, okay? When you answer, keep those two together, because the bottom is a carbon copy, and that's the way you score it. So if you don't keep it together, you're going to have to fill it out, and then you're going to have to go back to this second sheet and figure out which space you circled. So just they don't really kind of come together. See, they come apart, but just kind of put them together like that. So when you do it, so it scores real easy, right? And if you can't figure out how to score it, you call me. It'll be okay, and I'll help you do it. It doesn't. It's not that I think this is the greatest ever. I think it's a really good one. I don't think spiritual gift inventories are foolproof because they're man-made. So you ask other people what they think about your gift. I'll never forget one person that took it one time, and they said, I'm not like that at all. And everybody's like, that's exactly what you're like. Right? So you do it. And I don't mind sharing with you what mine is. Here are the things that were on there: evangelism, prophecy, teaching, exhortation, shepherding, serving, mercy showing, giving, administration. You want to know how I scored? There's how I scored. Okay? That's how I scored. I scored really high in prophecy and teaching, pretty low in giving, mercy showing, and serving. So if you want to get some mercy, you better go somewhere else to get it, because evidently you ain't getting it from me. Right? So, but there's a reason that there are people who are more skilled in a lot of areas than I'm skilled in, right? And it's because it's the way that God has distributed the gifts within His church. So you get down to 1 Corinthians 14, and you know what's happening? Their worship service was looking like absolute chaos. Absolute chaos. They'd have somebody with a gift, and they would start in with a gift, and somebody would just try to overpower that gift. Or maybe Houston would start a song, and Charlie would think, well, I know a song better than that song. And Charlie starts singing another song at the same time that Houston is singing his song. And then Ray back there says, well, that reminds me of another song. And they're all three singing songs at the same time, and it's confusing. And somebody gets up to preach, and while one person is preaching, 2 or 3 other people get up and preach at the same time. And it's just, or somebody's speaking in a tongue, and other people get up and start doing it all at the same time. They're just, everybody's trying to outdo somebody else. And Paul looks at that and he says, that's not what it's supposed to be like. You know, do stuff one at a time. Now, this is the way we do things, okay? So this is pretty typical Clarksville Highway Church of Christ, pretty typical anywhere you go kind of church. How many preachers do we normally have at a time? One. So we get one guy who gets up and preaches. That gets to be me. But you know what would be okay? And he's going to call me out of this because I didn't ask him if I could do it. I'm going to call Travis Claude out. There have been times that I've done a sermon, and Travis would say, man, I wish you'd have used this as an illustration. And it is a beautiful illustration. I mean, just spot on. And I'm like, well, why didn't you get up and say it? Right? Why didn't you get up and share it? Now he's back there in the back in the sound room with his own microphone, be like the voice of God when he spoke, right? So why didn't you share it? Now, honestly, probably the reason is that's not the way we do things, right? But what does Paul say the church looked like? If someone is speaking and a message from God comes to somebody else, what does the first guy do? He's quiet and he sits down and he lets the other guy speak. And then another message will come to somebody, and that person will stand up and have a message. And if anybody has a hymn, right? So we do. This morning was perfect. And I'm not saying we should do this. I'm just telling you it's okay. He's talking about doing things one at a time, making it in some kind of orderly fashion. When the PowerPoint went out, boy, doesn't this really mess us up when our screen goes out now? It's like, oh, no, we got a screen. Wow. What if when that went out, Johnny Mitchell said, you know, it reminds me of a song. And Johnny just starts singing a song. And Johnny leads a song, and we all sing along with Johnny, and Johnny finishes his song, and Reggie's, reminds me, and then Reggie starts singing a song, and we just start singing with Reggie. Would that be okay? I don't think it'd be more than okay. I believe it'd be beautiful. I believe it'd be beautiful. Because what Paul is looking at, he says, look, what are you doing with your gift? You know, and as elders, I didn't ask the elders if I could say this, but it's okay because I'm going to say it anyway. You know, one of our chief responsibilities is help you to see how you are supposed to use your gift within God's church and encourage you to do that. And I'll just be honest with you, I think we're doing a pitiful job of that. I just don't think we're doing well with it at all. Because this is the body. And every part in the body has a part. Remember where we started? What's one of the chief ways that God makes himself known in the world in which we live? is by the spiritual gift that God has given you and the manifestation of that gift as the world sees it as you use it. And I just want to ask you, what happens if you don't use it? What do they see? All they see is a huge void in the world because you're not allowing God's Spirit to work through you to show the message of God to the world. And I just want to encourage you, find your gift and use it. I don't know where you are in your life today, if you need to respond to the invitation, if maybe you need to become a Christian. I mean, maybe you need to become a believer in Jesus so that He will give you the gift of His Spirit. And then God will empower you to be the manifestation of His Spirit in the world. Maybe you are a Christian, but maybe you just haven't, whatever gift, whatever ability, whatever power God has given you, you haven't used it, and you're searching for it, and you just want prayers of wisdom and strength as you try to find out what that is. If you have a need, we're going to ask you to come while we stand and sing.